I always believed that a mother's love could survive anything, even disappointment. But the moment I opened that envelope and saw the flight ticket to Florida, I felt it in my gut. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. And I had no idea that this relaxing getaway my son insisted on was his perfect opportunity to betray me. Before I dive into this story, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always amazed to see how far our stories travel. Let me start with the truth. I raised my son, Travis, as a single mom. His dad left us before Travis was even born, and I worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. We didn't have much, but I made sure he never went to bed hungry and always had clean clothes for school. When I finally bought my house, a charming 2-story place near the coast of Oregon, it was the biggest accomplishment of my life. Every corner of it held memories. Travis's tiny handprints on the garage wall, our mismatched Christmas lights still stored in the basement, the kitchen I repainted 3 times just to find the right shade of blue. I thought Travis cherished those memories too. But as the years passed and he started chasing big money in Silicon Valley, I noticed a shift. He started talking about my house like it was a financial asset, not a home. "Mom, you could make a killing if you sold. That neighborhood's hot now," he said one afternoon, stirring his overpriced oat milk latte while I served him homemade peach cobbler. I smiled, like always. "Honey, it's not about the price. This house is where I raised you. I'm not ready to let go." He didn't push, at least not then. But I saw the flicker in his eyes, the kind of look people get when they're calculating. And I should have known better, but I didn't. A few weeks later, Travis called me out of the blue. "Mom, big news. I booked you a surprise cruise, all expenses paid. You deserve a break." I laughed. "A cruise? Where to?" 7 nights in the Caribbean, palm trees, spa treatments, gourmet food. No arguments, you're going. I was stunned. Travis had never done anything like that before. My son, who once forgot my birthday, suddenly remembered I needed a break. But I wanted to believe it was a gesture of love. I wanted to believe I raised a good man. I should have asked more questions. The morning I left, I took one last stroll around the house. I even kissed the corner of the old hallway wall where Travis used to run his toy truck back in the day. My luggage was light, but my heart was heavy. Travis helped me into the airport like he couldn't wait for me to be gone. "Don't worry about anything, Mom," he said with a grin. "I'll check on the house while you're away." That one sentence should have told me everything. But I boarded that flight, convinced I was overthinking. The cruise itself was lovely. Warm breezes, fruity drinks with little umbrellas, and bingo nights with couples named Ethel and Dawn. But I couldn't shake the unease. I found myself wandering to the ship's computer lounge just to check my email. But oddly, there was never anything from Travis. On the 3rd day of the trip, the cruise director made an announcement over breakfast. "Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to enter our special vacation jackpot drawing. One lucky guest will win a prize that could change your life." I nearly ignored it. I never entered those things. I wasn't lucky. I was practical. But that morning, something nudged me. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was instinct. So I scribbled my name on the form, dropped it in the big golden drum, and walked away. I had no idea what was about to happen next. In New Chapter, my name is called over the loudspeakers, and everything in my life turns upside down. I still remember the exact moment my name echoed through the speakers on that ship. "Margaret Ellison, please report to the Sapphire Lounge immediately," the announcer said cheerfully. "We have something exciting to share with you." I blinked. My coffee cup froze midair. "Did they just say my name?" I whispered. A couple sitting next to me, retirees from Michigan, turned and grinned. You must be the lucky one. Go, go. I stood up on trembling legs. My heart wasn't pounding. It was thundering. And for what? A free dinner? A spa voucher? I reached the lounge, a glamorous room with velvet chairs and glowing chandeliers, and saw two cruise officials standing on a small stage. The bigger one held an envelope. The slimmer woman beamed like she'd rehearsed this 100 times. "Margaret Ellison," she cheered when I stepped in. "Congratulations! You are the grand prize winner of the Caribbean Cruise Jackpot." Applause. A few people whistled. I was too stunned to clap for myself. "You've just won $70 million from the National Oceanwide Lottery." The entire room gasped. I blinked again. "I'm sorry, what?" The woman handed me the envelope. I opened it slowly, like it might explode. Inside was a check, an actual check with my full name printed on it, a temporary claim number, and an eye-watering figure. $70,000 million. The entire room gasped. I blinked again. "I'm sorry, what?" The woman handed me the envelope. I opened it slowly, like it might explode. Inside was a check, an actual check with my full name printed on it, a temporary claim number, and an eye-watering figure. $70,000 million. I don't remember much after that. Someone handed me water. Someone else took a photo for their social media page. I just sat there, stunned, while the world swirled. The rest of the cruise passed like a dream. Everywhere I went, people smiled wider. Crew members suddenly remembered my name. The chef personally brought me dessert. I felt like royalty, and also a bit like I'd woken up in someone else's life. But deep down, once the champagne fog lifted, a colder thought began to settle. What was Travis up to back home? Because here's the thing, he still hadn't written. Not one email, not a single message asking how I was, or even if the cruise was nice. That wasn't like him. He'd usually send at least a thumbs up emoji after a text. So I got curious. I logged into a secure real estate portal I still had access to, one of the ones I'd used when I refinanced the house years ago. And right there, in black and white, I saw it. Pending sale, 3-bedroom historic home, estimated closing in 5 days. The photo attached was my house. I nearly dropped the laptop. The buyer's agent was listed as T. Ellison, authorized representative. Oh no, no, no. Travis didn't just check in on my house, he was selling it. While I sipped daiquiris and got pedicures, my own son was finalizing a deal to erase my life's work without my consent. When I returned home, I didn't go straight from the airport. I had the driver take me to a hotel downtown. I needed time to think, time to plan. And let me tell you, when you're holding a check for $70 million, your thinking changes. You stop reacting, you start strategizing. Travis had no idea I was back, and he had no idea what was coming. In New Chapter, I walk back into my house like nothing's changed and catch my son red-handed. Let the reckoning begin. I stood across the street from my own home, wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf around my hair, like I was some undercover actress in an old movie. The for sale sign had been pulled down. A Lexus sat in my driveway, not mine. 2 large planters I'd never seen before flanked the front door, and through the window, I spotted modern art on the walls. My walls. The boy had redecorated before the sale was even final. He was that confident. My fingers curled around the strap of my purse. That purse, by the way, now held the temporary certificate for $70 million. It felt like carrying a lightning bolt. But right now, I wasn't striking. Not yet. I was observing. And I'll be honest, part of me didn't want this to be real. Maybe it was all a mix-up. Maybe Travis had tried to call me, but the connection failed. Maybe this wasn't betrayal, just bad timing. I crossed the street and walked up the front steps like I owned the place. Because I did. I rang the bell. I heard muffled footsteps, a curse, and then the door opened. There he stood, Travis, my son, in a linen shirt, barefoot, holding a wine glass in the middle of the day. He froze. "Mom?" His face paled like he'd seen a ghost. "Oh, don't look so surprised," I said sweetly. "I figured I'd cut the cruise short. Turns out sunburns and buffet shrimp aren't all they're cracked up to be." He just blinked. His mouth opened and closed like a fish on a hook. Behind him, I saw a tall woman, probably in her 30s, lounging on my couch. She was sipping something bubbly and scrolling on her phone. She didn't even glance up. "Travis," I said, still smiling, "aren't you going to invite me in?" I walked inside like I belonged, because I did, but the place felt different. My cozy little home, the one filled with family photos, crocheted throws, and warm candlelight, now looked like a showroom, cold, sleek, soulless. My dining table was gone. A glass top thing had replaced it. The walls were painted gray. The cheerful curtains I'd sewn with my own 2 hands replaced by sheer drapes that made everything look washed out. "Wow," I said, slow and calm. "You've been busy." Travis closed the door behind me, his eyes darting everywhere, like he was calculating escape routes. "Mom, listen, I can explain." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I'd love to hear it." Okay, he said. "You've always said you didn't want to die in this house, right? You've told me that a dozen times." I tilted my head. "That's quite the paraphrase, Travis." I thought I'd help. I found an amazing buyer. They're paying cash. And look, I even put some of your stuff in storage." "My stuff?" I repeated, my voice lowering. "You put my life in storage?" Travis groaned. "Don't make this dramatic. I'm trying to take care of you." "No, honey, you're trying to take care of yourself," I snapped. He looked stunned. I hadn't used that tone with him since he was a teenager. The woman on the couch finally looked up. "Is this your mom?" she asked, lazily chewing on a strawberry. Her voice had that bored, spoiled tone that made me itch. "Yes, Caroline," muttered. "Didn't you say she was gone till next Friday?" Caroline blinked at me. "Aren't you, retired or something?" I smiled. "Oh, I'm very retired and very refreshed. You must be the decorator." She laughed, not getting it. "I'm the girlfriend." "Of course you are," I said, walking toward my kitchen. My cabinets had been gutted. New chrome appliances gleamed where my white enamel stove used to be. My grandmother's spice rack, gone. My chipped blue teapot, gone. Everything that made this house mine, erased. Travis trailed behind me. "Look, Mom, the deal's almost closed. I already signed the preliminary transfer." "Funny thing about that," I said, pulling out a folded copy of the deed from my purse. "You can't transfer ownership with the actual owner's signature, and I'm still standing here fully breathing." He blinked. "What are you talking about?" "I never signed a thing, and I spoke to a lawyer this morning. Your so-called deal," I tapped the paper, "is going nowhere." Silence. Dead, choking silence. Then I dropped the bomb. And while we're on the topic of life changes, I won the lottery. His face went blank. The lottery? 70 million. I let the words hang in the air like perfume. You tried to sell my house out from under me.
I came back owning more than this entire neighborhood. He stared at me like I was speaking ancient Greek. Caroline sat up straighter. Wait, 70 million? I turned slowly. That's right, sweetheart, and not a penny of it is for either of you.
Mom, please, let's talk about this. Travis's voice cracked a little as he followed me through what used to be my sunroom, now a minimalist office with a standing desk and a ridiculous glass sculpture that looked like a melted flamingo. Talk? I said, keeping my voice low and calm. Now you want to talk? I thought I was helping. You've been alone since retirement. That house was too big for you. No, I interrupted, turning to face him. What you thought was, Mom won't say no to a free cruise, and if I time it right, I can close the deal before she's back. His lips parted, but he didn't deny it. You took my keys, I continued. You gave people tours of my house. You moved in your girlfriend, who's now polishing off my strawberries. Caroline needed a place, and I needed respect, I snapped. The words echoed louder than I expected. I hadn't raised my voice since I walked in the door, but now it rang through the house, and it felt good, solid, long overdue. Travis sank into one of the chairs he bought, one of those expensive, low-backed things that looked like they belonged in a furniture museum, not a home. He rubbed his temples. Okay, I messed up. But Mom, $70 million? He looked up, a flash of hope crossing his face. We can fix everything. We, I repeated. That's cute. He stood again, desperate now. Just hear me out. What if we, I don't know, invested together? Real estate, maybe? You've always wanted to help other people. We could start a foundation. I let out a soft, humorless chuckle. A foundation, with you managing it, I suppose. No, I mean, yes, but with transparency. I swear, I'll do better. I'll be better. There it was, the pivot, the guilt, the charm. I knew this dance well. The Travis that used to ask for just a little help with rent, then show up a week later in designer sneakers. Travis, I said, folding my arms, I gave you 30 years of my life. I fed you, clothed you, sacrificed for you, but you just tried to erase me for a quick payday. That's not true. And here's the thing, I said, my voice quiet but firm. You didn't just try to sell my house. You sold my trust. From the living room, Caroline piped up. Honestly, you guys should calm down. There's enough to go around, right? I turned toward her. Sweetheart, the only thing going around is you, out that door. She blinked. Wait, what? You have 20 minutes. Grab your things. I don't care if you take that ugly pineapple lamp with you, but you're both getting out of my house. Mom, you can't. Oh, I can, and I will. I walked over to the entryway and opened the front door wide. You have two choices. Walk out now or deal with my lawyer. And trust me, she's not on a cruise. They left, eventually. Travis tried one more plea on the porch, promising we could work something out and that this was all a misunderstanding. But I didn't flinch. I just stood in the doorway, purse in hand, watching him realize, maybe for the first time, that the bank of Mom was closed, permanently. That night, I stayed in the house, alone. I sat in my old rocking chair, one of the few things he hadn't touched, and listened to the creak of the floorboards, the sound of the old radiator ticking, the wind brushing past my front window. It wasn't just a house. It was my life. And now, I had the money, the freedom, and finally, the clarity. I wasn't going to waste a cent trying to fix people who didn't want to be fixed. I was going to build something mine. The next morning, I walked into the office of my old friend and lawyer, Beverly Klein, a woman with a voice like gravel and a brain like a steel trap. "Margaret," she said, peeking over her reading glasses, "you look like someone who just found gold in her backyard." Close, I said, taking a seat across from her. I found it in the middle of the ocean. Beverly raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. I handed her the documents, the temporary lottery certificate, the unfiled deed Travis had drafted, and a printed screenshot of the online real estate listing with my house under pending sale. She took a long, slow breath. "Oh, honey," she muttered, "this is one for the books." Within 10 minutes, Beverly was on the phone with the escrow company. Her tone was firm, direct, and just this side of terrifying. "I represent Margaret Ellison, legal owner of 1456 Cherry Lane," she said. "No, she did not authorize this transaction. No, you do not have her signature. And if you proceed, you'll be staring down a civil suit so fast your fax machine will burst into flames." I almost applauded. She hung up and looked at me. "That sale's dead, cold. I'll file an injunction just to make sure. And as for your son," I held up a hand, "let's not sue him, yet." Beverly blinked. "You're kinder than I am." "I'm not doing this out of kindness," I said softly. "I'm doing it because I have something better in mind." We spent the next 2 hours going through everything, updating the deed to reflect my sole ownership again, adding protective clauses, setting up a trust. "A trust?" Beverly asked. "Yes," I said. "I want to create something that helps people, real people, not leeches like Caroline or selfish tech sons who think their mother is just sitting around waiting to be traded for a check." I watched her expression shift from skepticism to respect. "Let's call it the Ellison Foundation," I added. "We'll focus on women over 50, women who've been overlooked, pushed out, or manipulated like I was. We'll fund education, housing, second careers." Beverly leaned back and smiled. "Now that is justice." That afternoon, I went home and opened every box Travis had dumped into the garage. He hadn't just packed my things, he tossed them. Picture frames were shattered, my wedding china was chipped, my old journals were crumpled like junk mail. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I made tea, sat cross-legged in the garage with dust on my jeans and sunlight slanting through the window, and I started pulling out memories one by one. The photo of baby Travis holding my finger in the hospital, the knitted blanket my mother made before she passed, the birthday card from my friend Dorothy who died of cancer 6 years ago, a crooked crayon drawing labeled "Me and Mom and Our Big Blue House." It hurt, but it also reminded me this was mine, my history, my story, and I wasn't letting anyone write me out of it. That night, I sent Travis one final text. "House is off the market. Lawyer handled it. I'll be changing the locks tomorrow. Please don't contact me for a while. I need space. P.S. The foundation I'm starting won't be named after you." No reply. Just the little gray read notification, lingering like a tiny sigh on the screen. I turned off my phone. And for the first time in years, I felt completely still. Not because I'd won, but because I'd reclaimed something. The locks were changed the next morning. The locksmith, a cheerful man named Eddie with silver sideburns and a dog sticker on his toolbox, gave me a firm handshake and a wink when he handed over the new keys. "No one's getting in here unless you want them to," he said. "I made sure of that. That's how it's going to stay." I stood on my front porch afterward, taking in the morning air. The hydrangeas by the steps had wilted while I was away, probably because Travis didn't think watering plants mattered if they weren't on Instagram. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. By noon, I was sweating, smiling, and halfway through restoring my front garden. It wasn't just about the flowers, it was about me. Every weed I pulled felt like taking back something I'd given up. Every root I reburied was like setting a boundary. And then, just as I stood up, back aching and hands muddy, I heard a voice from the sidewalk. "Excuse me, are you Margaret?" I turned. A woman stood there, maybe late 50s, with salt and paper curls and a clipboard clutched to her chest. "Yes," I said slowly. "Can I help you?" She smiled. "I'm Angela. I run the Women's Support Center down on Birch Street. I heard through a friend at the permit office that you might be starting a foundation." I blinked. "I just started thinking about it, actually." Angela stepped forward, eyes kind but focused. "Well, we've got a group of women, older, most recently divorced or retired, and they've been trying to start their own sewing co-op, but they need funding, guidance, a space. I didn't mean to show up uninvited, but would you have time for coffee sometime this week?" I looked down at my hands, still covered in dirt, then back up at her. "I have time right now," I said. We sat on my back porch, yes, the one Travis tried to rip out to extend the kitchen, sipping iced tea and sharing stories. Angela told me about the women in her program. One had survived domestic abuse and now taught self-defense. Another had been a nurse for 40 years and was building a grief support network. Another, 68 years old, had just gotten her GED. They weren't looking for handouts. They were looking for a second chapter. And something in me clicked. That night, I opened my laptop and began working on the charter for the Ellison Foundation, not as a vague idea, but as a real entity. I would fund these women, I would build something that mattered. Not out of revenge, out of renewal. 3 days later, I got an unexpected invitation in the mail. A handwritten note tucked into a floral envelope. "Mrs. Ellison, we hope you enjoyed your cruise and congratulations on your incredible good fortune. You are formally invited to an exclusive evening gala aboard the same ship celebrating past winners and special guests. A car will be sent for you, formal attire encouraged, champagne provided. Sincerely, Oceanic Cruises Events Team." I stared at it, stunned. An event for winners? A celebration of chance? Something about it pulled at me. Maybe I'd been thrown into the spotlight for a reason. Maybe my story, the one that started with betrayal and ended in transformation, was meant to be shared. Not for applause, but for the women like me who never saw it coming. In New Chapter, I return to the ship that changed my life and discover I'm not the only one with a secret. I'll be honest, stepping back onto that ship felt surreal. Last time, I was just another woman with a tired suitcase and modest expectations. This time, I was escorted by a driver in a black suit who called me ma'am and opened every door like I was royalty. When I walked up the gangway, cameras were flashing. Not paparazzi, just event stuff. But still, I wasn't used to the spotlight. "Mrs. Ellison," said the cruise director with a polished smile, "welcome back. You were our most surprising winner last season and our most beloved. We're thrilled you could join us." "I almost didn't," I said honestly. He chuckled, like he thought I was joking. I wasn't. They led me to my suite. Not a cabin, a suite, with orchids on the table, champagne on ice, and a view of the ocean that could melt stress on sight. My gown, an emerald green number I hadn't worn in 20 years, still fit like a second skin. I pinned my silver hair into a chignon, applied my lipstick slowly, and looked at my reflection. Strong, grounded, and finally, free. The gala was held in the ship's grand ballroom, chandeliers glittering, live jazz playing, and guests sipping cocktails like they belonged in a movie. I spotted a few familiar faces from my first cruise. Most smiled and waved. One leaned toward his wife and whispered something while pointing at me, probably about the $70 million. Let them whisper. As I moved toward the edge of the room, I found myself standing near the long glass windows that faced the water. That's when I noticed him. A man maybe a few years older than me, with a quiet, thoughtful expression and a navy blue tux that actually fit him. He wasn't mingling, just watching, like me. Not a fan of crowds either? I asked, sipping my drink. He turned and smiled. They're fine in small doses, but I prefer knowing someone's story before pretending to laugh at their jokes. I chuckled. That's fair. I'm Henry, he said, extending his hand. Margaret? Ah, he said, with a knowing look. The woman who turned a cruise into a fairy tale. I tilted my head. Is that what they're calling it? He smiled. Well, I heard champagne nearly ran out when you won. We both laughed. As we stood there, watching the waves roll under the moonlight, he shared his story, small pieces at first. He was a retired architect, widowed. His daughter hadn't spoken to him in years, not since he refused to sell the family farm she wanted to flip into a wellness retreat. She claimed he was blocking her brand. I winced. So it's not just sons. He shook his head. Family doesn't always mean loyalty. Sometimes it's just blood. That struck me hard, because it was true, and sad, and freeing all at once. We ended up sitting at the same table that night. He didn't gawk at the money. He didn't ask for favors. He just listened, really listened, as I told the story of how I almost lost everything and found something better instead. At one point, as the music shifted into a softer, slower tune, Henry stood and offered me his hand. Would you like to dance? I hadn't danced in years, but something in me said yes. And there, under the golden lights and surrounded by strangers who only knew the headlines, I let myself sway. Not as a widow, not as a mother, not even as a millionaire. Just as me. In New Chapter, a surprising offer comes my way, and a familiar face from my past returns with one last trick up his sleeve. The morning after the gala, I woke to a gentle knock on my suite door. It wasn't room service. It was a young assistant from Oceanic Cruises holding a navy blue envelope with embossed gold lettering. Mrs. Ellison, she said, almost reverently, you've received a personal invitation from our board. I raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Inside was a sleek card that read, due to your remarkable story and inspiring presence, we would be honored to offer you a guest speaking position on our upcoming Journeys After 60 cruise series. We believe our guests would benefit from hearing your experience, not just your win, but your resilience. Let us know if you'd be open to it. A generous speaking fee is included. I stared at the card for a long moment. I hadn't expected this. People wanted to hear from me? Me, a former substitute teacher, hobby gardener, and accidental lottery winner? But deep inside, I knew something had changed. Maybe I really did have something to say. Maybe it was time to stop hiding behind modesty and start sharing on purpose. I folded the card and slipped it into my travel journal. After I disembarked, I spent a quiet day back home, until early evening when the buzzer rang. I checked the camera on the porch, and there he was, Travis. No Lexus this time, no linen shirt, just my son standing stiffly in a windbreaker, holding something wrapped in brown paper. I opened the door, but only halfway. Hi, Mom, he said. Travis. He shifted. I brought something. He held out the package. It's the photo, the one from when I was 5, you and me at the beach. I found it in the storage bin. Thought you'd want it. I took it, didn't invite him in. Thanks, I said, flat. He swallowed hard. Look, I've been thinking about what I did, and I was wrong, so wrong. I got greedy. I got stupid. I didn't speak. I thought the house didn't mean much to you anymore. I thought maybe you were lonely, that I could fix everything. I raised an eyebrow. By erasing me? No, he said quickly. I mean, I see it now. You're not just my mom. You're something bigger. You always were. I just didn't want to admit it. I crossed my arms. What do you want, Travis? He hesitated. A second chance. Not for the money. Just, I miss you. For the first time in a long time, I saw the boy in his eyes. The one who used to run to me when he skinned his knee. The one who cried when his goldfish died. The one I read bedtime stories to when he was too scared to sleep. But then I remembered the silence, the sail, the way he looked at me like I was in the way. I believe people can change, I said slowly. But it takes more than words on a porch. He nodded. I took a breath. I'm going to speak on cruise ships now, about women over 60 reclaiming their stories. I'm building a foundation. I'm not sure where life is going, but I know where it's not going. Back to pretending I owe anyone my peace. He looked down. Keep working on yourself, Travis. Maybe someday we can talk again, but not now. I closed the door gently, not with anger, but with finality. Later that night, I unwrapped the photo. It was wrinkled but intact. Me in a sun hat, Travis in water wings, holding a pail of seashells. I smiled. That version of us still lived in my heart, but we weren't going back. We were moving forward. The first time I stood behind a podium as a guest speaker, I thought I might faint. The ballroom was full, mostly women my age or older. Some sat with their daughters, others alone, holding glasses of iced tea and wearing those little lanyards with plastic name tags that always get tangled. They weren't celebrities. They weren't polished influencers. They were real, just like me. The cruise director introduced me with great fanfare. She turned betrayal into a blessing. Please welcome Margaret Ellison. Applause erupted. I took a breath, stepped forward, and began. I didn't come here as a millionaire, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I came here as a mother who was lied to, as a woman who trusted too much, gave too much, and got tired of being called outdated. I looked out into the sea of faces, some nodding, some wiping tears before I even finished the first sentence. I raised my son alone. I gave him everything I had. And when I was 60, he sent me away so he could sell the very house I built for us both. While I was gone, I won a lottery, $70 million. A small gasp rippled through the crowd. But the real win, I said slowly, wasn't the money. It was realizing I didn't need to ask permission to be powerful. For the next 20 minutes, I told the full story. Not just the betrayal, or the moment I held the check. I spoke about loneliness, about how easy it is to be erased when your hair goes gray and your children stop listening. I talked about starting a foundation, about gardening on sore knees, about grief and hope and letting go without apology. And when I finished, the room was completely still. Until a woman in the front row stood up. She was probably in her late 60s, wearing a loose blouse and a tired expression that cracked open as she spoke. My daughter made me sell my home last year, she said, voice shaking. Told me it was for my own good. Said she needed the money more than I needed a backyard. I've been living in a rented condo, crying into boxed wine and feeling like I didn't matter anymore. She wiped her eyes. But you reminded me that I do. The applause that followed wasn't for me alone. It was for her, for every woman in that room who had been quietly suffering under someone else's story. After the talk, a line formed. Women hugged me. Some gave me business cards. One even slipped me a note that read, "Thank you for reminding me that my voice didn't expire when I turned 60. And just when I thought the night couldn't get more meaningful, I saw Henry.
He stood in the back of the room, a soft smile on his face, hands clasped behind his back, like a man who'd been watching something sacred unfold. "May I?" he asked. I nodded. We walked together down the promenade deck, moonlight bouncing off the water. I told him about the woman who'd stood up. He told me about an idea he'd had, converting an old farmhouse into a retreat for older women starting new lives. "Funding's the hard part," he said. I stopped. Not anymore. When I returned home after that cruise, I called Beverly. "We're expanding the foundation," I said. "We're going to fund microgrants, workshops, housing, coaching. We're going to build not just a second chapter, but an entire second volume." She laughed. "Margaret, you're turning into an empire." "No," I said. "I'm turning into myself." I didn't know what the next year would bring, whether Travis would ever come around, whether I'd fall in love again, or live alone with my daisies and rescue dog named Bingo. But I knew this. I wasn't someone's mother, or someone's burden, or someone's asset. I was Margaret Ellison, and I was just getting started. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon. The kind where the sun makes lazy golden shapes on the living room rug, the kettle whistles gently, and the world feels like it's finally learned to whisper instead of scream. I was snipping basil from my little kitchen windowsill garden when I heard the knock. It wasn't hurried. It wasn't loud. It was hesitant, soft. I wiped my hands on a towel, walked to the front door, and looked through the peephole. It was him, Travis, my son. But not the version who had tried to sell my house, not the version who wore polished shoes and entitlement like armor. This version looked smaller, eyes sunken, shoulders slumped, no girlfriend, no par in the driveway. Just him and a duffel bag that looked far too worn for someone who once bragged about first class only. I opened a door, just enough to be seen, not enough to invite. He looked up at me, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hi, Mom." I said nothing. He looked down, then back up. I didn't know where else to go. My instinct, for a split second, was to open the door wider, to offer tea, a bed, forgiveness. But that woman, the one who said yes out of habit, she didn't live here anymore. I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. We sat in silence for a while. Finally, he spoke. "Caroline left, took everything, even my laptop." I nodded. "Startup crashed. No one's hiring." I nodded again. I messed everything up. I know that now." My voice was steady. "You figured that out before or after you tried to steal my house?" His face flushed. "I know I don't deserve anything, not even your time. But I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." "And?" "And I've been staying on a friend's couch. I'll figure something out. I'm not here to ask for money." That surprised me. Not because I didn't expect the couch part, but because, for once, he hadn't followed "I'm sorry" with a request. Still, I knew Travis. I knew how words could be dressed up to look like accountability when they were just strategies. I sipped my tea. He looked at me again, voice softer. "I never really saw you. I mean, I saw you as Mom, not as a woman, not as someone with her own dreams. I thought, once I had success, I'd take care of you, that you'd be proud of me." I tilted my head. "Do you think what you did made me proud?" "No." His voice cracked. "I think I just wanted control. I didn't want to feel small, but I made you feel smaller to do it, and that's not love." Silence fell between us like a soft blanket, not suffocating, but heavy with truth. "Travis," I said finally, I believe people can grow, but growth takes time and consistency. You've said sorry before. I know, he nodded. I don't expect anything. I'm not going to open this door for you today, but I'll open a path. He blinked. What do you mean? I reached into my tote bag by the door and handed him a brochure, one from the Ellison Foundation. It read, "For women and men ready to rebuild." You want help? I said. Start here. Apply like anyone else. You'll be screened like anyone else. And if you show me over time, not just today, that you're serious about building a better life, then maybe, one day, I'll invite you for dinner again. His eyes welled. You do that? I'd consider it, not because I owe you, but because I believe in redemption when it's real. He nodded slowly, as if finally understanding that love, like trust, was no longer unconditional. It had terms now, boundaries, and that was okay. He stood. I'll read it. Thank you. I nodded. As he walked back down the steps, duffel bag over his shoulder, I didn't feel triumph. I felt peace. I turned back toward my home, my quiet, sunlit home, and smiled. Because this was my kingdom now, not built on bitterness, but on balance. And I wasn't just rebuilding my life, I was protecting it. Go to new chapter, I travel to a women's retreat funded by my foundation and witness a moment that proves I didn't just save myself, I started a movement.
It was a crisp Saturday morning when I arrived at the farmhouse. The same one Henry had once talked about, a faded property at the edge of town with ivy curling along the shutters and a wraparound porch that hadn't seen fresh paint in years. But now, the porch gleamed, the windows sparkled. A handmade wooden sign hung near the front gate. The Second Bloom Retreat, a place to begin again. There were folding chairs on the lawn, a table with lemonade and oatmeal cookies, and a cheerful banner with our foundation's logo, the one Beverly's niece had designed for free because she said her grandmother had deserved a place like this. I stood there for a moment in silence, my heels planted in damp grass, as women began arriving one by one. Some came alone. Some came in pairs, arm in arm. Some came slowly, cautiously, like they didn't believe the invitation was truly meant for them. Angela, the woman who first brought the co-op idea to me, spotted me near the front steps. "Margaret," she smiled, coming in for a hug. "You did it." "No," I said, hugging her back. "We did." She led me inside the farmhouse, which had been transformed into a warm, welcoming space. Wooden floors polished to a glow, shelves lined with books and sewing supplies, a full kitchen, and upstairs, 6 cozy bedrooms with patchwork quilts and handwritten welcome notes. Each woman will stay a month, Angela explained. They'll take workshops, get therapy if they want it, learn job skills, or just rest. Some haven't had a real bed to themselves in years. I blinked back tears. "Come on," she said, tugging my hand. "Someone wants to meet you." She brought me to the back garden where a woman sat in a sun hat planting tulip bulbs. Her hands were covered in soil, her face pink from the morning chill. "Margaret," Angela said softly, "this is Gloria. She's our first resident." Gloria looked up. Her eyes were wary, tired, and then hopeful. "I don't know what to say," she said, standing and brushing off her knees. "This place, it's the first time I felt safe in over 10 years. She hesitated, then added, "I was in a bad marriage, left with nothing, slept in my car for a while. But then I heard your story, the cruise, the house, the way you didn't let it break you. I thought maybe I could do the same." I didn't answer right away.
Instead, I stepped forward and gently held her hands, dirty, strong, real hands, in mine. "You already are doing the same," I said. That afternoon, I stood on the newly painted porch and gave a short speech. I kept it simple. I didn't plan any of this. I didn't dream it up in a boardroom. I lived it. I survived it. And I decided the story wouldn't end with betrayal. It would begin with rebirth. The crowd, small but powerful, clapped softly. And then Henry appeared beside me, holding 2 pairs of shears. "Ribbon?" he asked. "Let's do it." We stood together at the gate, smiling at the crowd of women watching, some filming on their phones, others just holding coffee and each other. We cut the ribbon, and in that moment, something opened far deeper than a building. It was a future. For women who were always told they were too old, too quiet, too much, or too late. But not anymore. That evening, as I walked through the garden one last time, I saw Gloria sitting under the arbor, reading a book with her legs tucked beneath her. She looked up and said, "Do you think I could work here someday?" "I think," I said, smiling, "that's exactly the plan."
The letter arrived on a Thursday. It wasn't an email, not a text, a real letter. Thick paper, clean handwriting, the kind of thing people don't send anymore unless they mean every word. It was addressed simply, Margaret Ellison, 1456 Cherry Lane. No mom, no return address, but I knew the handwriting. I'd seen it on homemade birthday cards and spelling tests, and years later, on the back of real estate contracts he hoped I'd never read. I opened it slowly, like one opens old photo albums, with curiosity, dread, and the tiniest sliver of hope. Dear Mom, I've spent the last 3 months doing something I never thought I'd have the courage to do, sitting with myself. Not rebranding, not fixing optics, just facing the parts of me I never wanted you to see. I enrolled in therapy. I started journaling. I even took part in a men's group where I had to listen, really listen, to other sons who'd made mistakes. One of the guys asked me, "Would your mother be proud of the man you are if she met you today as a stranger?" And I couldn't answer, because I knew the truth. The answer was no. I was ashamed. I used your love like a resource. I treated your house like a prize. I treated you like a backup plan. But you didn't crumble. You didn't beg. You didn't shut down. You stood up. You showed me what real strength looks like. That's why I'm writing to say, I want to donate $50,000 to the Ellison Foundation. Not as a buy-in, not as a bribe, as a thank you for giving me life and for showing me what it means to live with purpose. I don't expect anything from this, not a relationship, not a clean slate. I just want to be a small part of something good, something you built. If you ever decide you'd like to talk, I'll be here. With love, Travis. I read it twice. Then I folded it, set it on the kitchen table, and stared out the window for a long while. My tea went cold. Not because I was angry, not because I didn't believe him, but because something inside me, something tightly coiled, had finally loosened. The next day, I forwarded the letter to Beverly. "I'd like to accept the donation," I wrote, anonymously, no ceremony, no headlines. She wrote back one line. "That's the classiest revenge I've ever seen." I smiled. It wasn't revenge. It was release. Weeks passed. Spring arrived. I planted tomatoes and lavender. I gave a keynote at a women's conference in Denver. I held Gloria's hand when she became the first retreat resident to accept a job as a counselor herself. I never replied to the letter.
Not because I was cold, but because some things don't need to be answered right away. Some things live in the quiet, like forgiveness, like healing, like love that's no longer tangled up in guilt. One Sunday morning, I went out onto the porch with my tea. The wind carried the smell of fresh grass and something new in bloom. And for the first time in my life, my full, unfiltered, unapologetically mine life, I felt whole. Not because I'd won, but because I'd chosen myself. And once a woman does that, there's no going back.